Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good very early morning for some of us. Welcome to this CS enablement session, CS Skills Exchange, as we call it. So today we are actually honored to have Fernando Diaz with us to talk to us about enhanced DevSecOps, actually, not only DevOps, but DevSecOps and compliance management demo environment. And I guess he took Tutsi away, so Tutsi's not going to advance the slide for us, but he's going to help us with that. So without much further ado, Fern, I'll let it over to you. And so, by the way, welcome partners. We have partners this morning. Welcome, and hopefully you'll enjoy the session as well.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tabo. That was a great introduction. So my name is Fernando. I work in technical marketing, and we make all these different assets that we can use within marketing to really showcase GitLab and its benefits. And the thing I wanted to go over today was an environment that we've created and we continue to iterate on. And this is something that we use for different things like showcasing to different partners, customers, analysts, and we use these environments to kind of really show off how these features work. And this is something public facing that anyone can access and anyone can go through. I'm in the process right now of building a security workshop that can be used from anybody to learn the different security features and how to use them and best practices. So let me start with showcasing you the demo project, what we have. So, oh, and one thing I wanted to add, there is a document where you can add any questions that you have, but also instead of just questions as I go through the demo project, if there's anything that you'd like to see in it that you haven't seen already or that's not included in there, feel free to add it in this document, and it'll be something I'll consider adding to the demo project.
Yep. The document link is in the chat. Thanks, Fern.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So within our tech marketing, group, I've created this DevSecOps, another subgroup called DevSecOps, and within it, there's going to be two things. There's the workshop that I'm working on, but then there's also this Initech project named after the movie Office Space. And I so happen to live in Austin where it was filmed. So that was kind of some inspiration. I actually used to work at IBM down the street, Breaker, where the first traffic scene was recorded, where it's stop and go traffic. It was actually recorded right by IBM. And I did work at IBM in the past, which I consider to be Initech in a sense. So just adding a little bit of information as why I chose that name. But if you go here, I'm going to first demonstrate what applications there are and what they feature. And after this call, you can go ahead and actually come to the site and you can clone it yourself and try different things and play around with it. So first one we have here is the Bill Lumberg Notes, which is based off a notes application that we commonly use to showcase different features. It's just a simple application. This is what it looks like. And what it is just an application where you just kind of go ahead and add notes. So I can add the note and then it'll tell me, hey, has been added. And then if you see at the bottom, this hey note was added. So in the past, this was using a SQLite database, and I can only have one container running because since it's a static file, there would be problems with the locking between two different applications accessing the same static file. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and made a change to actually use a MariaDB backend. So this will be running with MariaDB in the backend. You'll be able to replicate it and scale horizontally and make multiple pods with multiple containers in them, and then they would access the database. So I've done that. It has an add delete feature, and then I've added an admin login, so you can log in. You have basic auth, and then with this basic auth, you can go ahead and reset the database table. And this is and the way that this ties in is you'll see different things detected by our vulnerability scanners, like insecure authentication, because password was just 4 letters and it's actually hard coded. So our secret detector will find that, and we'll actually be able to use DAST to reveal a vulnerability within the system or very insecure authentication. So that's the reason I created that. It's a simple application. You can come here and you can see the GitLab YAML, and you can see that I deploy the database. So I just use a Helm chart to deploy a MariaDB. And then I deploy the staging. So I have a staging environment where I'll actually, so this uses the Kubernetes agent. And what it does is I'll get the context from the actual Kubernetes agent, and then I'm able to run kubectl commands with the permissions that the agent is given. So you'll be able to do different things like this Helm upgrade is possible because of the context that I'm using. And then within here, you can see all the different templates, which I have for the different security jobs that run, and different variables that I need for DAST to recognize what it's going to be targeting. So if I look at a merge request here, so I created a merge request where I just added a bunch of vulnerabilities. So I added, like, made the permissions on, oh, sorry. Okay. I think someone.
Yes, somebody is on.
Bernard.
Look for him and meet them.
Okay, no worries. I can continue. I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you go to, so you can see some changes here where I actually also do code quality. So I've actually integrated the code quality scanner, and it'll pick up little minor code quality changes. I've made a return to 500 to check out the API scanning. And I've done just a whole bunch of different changes that will trigger vulnerabilities. So if I go here, you'll see a few things that are set up. So the first one is merge request approvals. And if you haven't seen merge request approvals, they're a way of kind of validating code and allowing others to review code. So it's kind of, you're enforcing the review process. And what happens is if you have a vulnerability, so if there's a new vulnerability detected in your system, then you can add different members to actually approve this merge request. So this merge request can't actually be committed unless it's been approved if certain criteria are detected. So one would be the vulnerability check, which if there's any vulnerability detected, and you can kind of fine tune it to the different types of vulnerabilities, and I'll show you that. A license check, if a denied license is detected, there's a license policy. And if there's a denied one detected, then you'll need someone to approve. And same thing with the coverage check. If coverage happens to drop, then you'll require approval in order to get this committed. And the reason why we do this for coverage is working in the open source community. So I used to work a lot within the Kubernetes community, and in the past OpenStack. And there were many cases where merge requests would not be reviewed unless they actually had unit tests that would test your function. So this kind of enforces that even to another level, where now we see the coverage drop. That means you probably didn't cover everything with your unit tests. So you can keep iterating on that, and then you'll be able to actually get anyone to merge it if the coverage didn't drop. But if the coverage did drop, then you'll need specific people to kind of go through and actually merge it. And it could be maybe you didn't understand how to mock a particular function or something, then it really enforces that education for you to learn and go to other members that may know that. So, and then I'll go back to that. I'll come back to that, to the merge request approvals. But for now, you can see that with these vulnerabilities that I added, you're going to pick up a whole bunch of different potential vulnerabilities. And maybe for fine tuning it next time, I'll put less, because it might be a little bit overwhelming, but that's one thing I'm considering now. but you'll be able to find to-dos and just different things with code quality. If you go to security scanning, you can see just all the vulnerabilities detected, and they're separated by the different scanners. So, and you can see that secret detection, coverage fuzzing, and API fuzzing. They detected no vulnerabilities because what this does is it scans the diff. But within the main branch, in the vulnerability report, you'll be able to see everything that's in the main branch. But this will just detect the stuff that's been introduced in the diff. So you can see that it was detected the content type header wasn't present, and here's the request, the response, and it'll give you some evidence as to what URL was hit, and then it'll give you a solution. So makes it really easy to see how to resolve an issue. So seeing that, so all this has been set up within the project, and you can actually replicate this and do all this using the security workshop, which I'll go to. Then I'll give you just a little sneak peek of that. But if I go back to DevSecOps and I go to the DevSecOps workshop, so there'll be 3 items here, which will allow you to perform separation of duties and the security scans that we've gone through. So if you go to this workshop, so just to let you know, it's still a work in progress. It's, let's say, about 80% complete, I can say, but there's still a lot that I need to add to this. So just you know, it'll be complete within the upcoming weeks, but just to kind of show you a little bit of what I've been working on. So you'll be able to come to the site made with GitLab Pages using Hugo, which is a Go templating engine. And what you'll be able to see here is you'll see a workshop, and you'll see all the prerequisites needed to actually, you know, get started. So this is using GKE. So I'll go over actually creating a cluster. And what I'm working on now is making these animated GIFs of like the process. So I just need to do more zooming and enhance the quality. But the whole idea is that everything's going to have an animated GIF. So you can follow the steps 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you expand this, you'll be able to see it in action, me performing it in an animated GIF. So I've been working on adding these GIFs to all the sections where you need something. So like here, there'll be another one that'll show how to create the group, how to clone the sample project. Right now, it's just the static instructions. So it'll go through everything, setting up the project, setting up the security scanner, so you can learn more about our security scanners here and what they do. And then this will show you how to add the templates, the DAS website, setting up merge request approvals, license policies, etc. So it goes through everything that you need to get started with DevSecOps, all the main features. So adding vulnerable code. So what I just showed you there with the vulnerable code, I actually show you how to create that and what to add and how to view it. So this is going to be the public facing workshop. There's going to also be a workshop that's independent, that's going to be for essays, and that's going to be using our demo systems cloud. But for public facing audience, we want everyone to be able to perform these workshops, everyone to be able to see these features and kind of go at it on their own pace if they want. So that this is the reason why I've created this. And it was inspired by Kelsey Hightower's Kubernetes the Hard Way, where it's a bunch of different MD files and they go over the process of setting up Kubernetes from scratch. And I kind of wanted to do something similar where it's public facing and anyone wants to come in and learn about GitLab security features can do that, you know, within their own time and at their own pace. So, and then other things I'm working on, there's a little contribution guide, which just tells you how to contribute, a development guide, which I'm working on re-adding the, SQLite database. So I want to add an option for you to be able to actually use the SQLite database. And what will happen is you'll be able to run this locally as well. So you used to be able to run it locally, but then I created a MariaDB database that you actually need to deploy and point to. But I'm going to work on allowing local development as well. so that way anyone can just work on it and add different features and push them up and be able to run the code. So there's that. And then I'm also going to add an architecture diagram on how this works. So, and then there's going to be other topics as well, which will include on-demand scans, dependency listing, the GraphQL API. So this is a work in progress, but it's going to be finished pretty soon. So let me go back to tech marketing, build Lumberg notes. Okay. So now going back to this project, let me go to general, and since I promised I was going to go over merge request approvals real quick. This is where you set it up, and just so I can show you the vulnerability check, you can see that these are the items that require approval. So you can require approval for any of these types of scans, any branches, any statuses, and how many vulnerabilities you allow, and as well as the severity level. So you can really fine tune this to meet your needs and add different groups and different users to see who can approve. So if you need a bunch of different people that can approve, then you can do that as well. But it'd typically be the security team. And there's also other things which, you want to prevent the same person that created the merge request from actually merging it themselves, because you want to have like a secondary pair of eyes to view this. So now let me go in the next thing that the workshop also covers this, and it's also part of the demo project. If I go back to tech marketing, I can go to my settings, general, and what I want to show now is separation of duties, and this is going to be done using the compliance frameworks. So what you do here is you either add a framework or you'd edit an existing framework. These are ones I've created. So GDPR compliance, let's say I created a GDPR compliance job, which I want to set what our GDPR compliance policy is. Then what I do is I give it a name, I give it a color, description, but the most important part is I point at a compliance file. So I can point at the compliance GDPR YAML. So this is pointing to a project that developers from this team don't have access to. Only the compliance officers and security team has access to this project. And I'm pointing at a file within that project. So let's go to that project, and I'll leave this open just so you can see. So go to DevSecOps, go to Initech. So it was in tech marketing, DevSecOps, Initech, partners, compliance files. So partners, and it's in this one, compliance files. So you can see it's pointing at compliance GDPR. So yeah, compliance GDPR. And this job has dependency scanning, container scanning, secret detection. And it also has the GDPR job, which this would be a script that we'd run for compliance. Right now, I'm just echoing we're compliant, solve the GDPR problem. So now if I go back to partners and I go to a partner with the actual label of GDPR, which is this label here, which tells us to run this file, I can click on it and I can see that, oh, there's another GitLab CI YAML here. So developers have access to this one, but you see that there's no GDPR job or anything on there. So how do we enforce separation of duties? Well, you'll see that the last pipeline run actually contains all the scans and the GDPR job. So here you'll see we're compliant. So that puts together separation of duties, and you can actually see that the file that's run is the file that's managed. The pipeline that's run is the pipeline that's managed by the security team and compliance officers, but the developers don't have access to modifying that. So no matter what they modify within their project, they'll never be able to modify the pipeline that's being run because they don't have permission to that. So that allows for separation of duties and compliance. You won't be easily able to skip compliance and just merge something in and then add it later, because You're verifying compliance at each step, at each commit. So, and that the instructions to that will also be within the workshop, and that will be included on there as well. But right now, I just wanted to showcase that to you. And to add a label, to add the label to the project, I believe you can go here to the settings of the project, and you can just add a compliance framework label.
Fernando?
Yeah.
And that's the label a developer can't change, right?
Correct.
I want to make sure that, okay. Got it.
Correct.
Thank you.
The developer won't be able to touch that. That will be something that will be enforced by either a project owner or a project maintainer. So then continuing on, then there's also, man, I didn't, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out here. Okay.
Fernando, just piggybacking on what Alejandro asked, if a maintainer or owner did remove it, even though, because they're not usually the security compliance persona, is that, I mean, that's allowed, right? So I've had customers ask me, you know, what's preventing them from doing that, even though they're maintaining and owning that project. I guess you would just look at your audit log and you could point it back and maybe run a report or something to catch those incidents.
Yeah, so no, so this would be kind of, it's based on the company, right? The company would have to make a policy, a physical, like paper policy of how we work and what we do. And yeah, within the audit report or compliance, so let me show you that actually. So when I go here and I go do my compliance report, you'll be able to see if different merge requests are compliant and what's not. So you can see here that there'll be an approval status. There'll be at least one rule does not adhere to separation of duties, and you'll see if the pipeline will has passed or not. So you can see that within there, and you can see like, hey, are things actually compliant? But the real way of knowing was what you said, the audit event. So you'll be able to see that label was removed, and you'll see it on the audit events, and you'll be able to see who removed it. So you'll be like, hey, don't do that, that's against our policy. But in the future, so right now we only have like the different roles, which are the developer, the maintainer, the owner, etc. So in the future, we're working on more fine-grained permissions. So in the future, you'll be able to say what users can and can't do. So you can be a maintainer, but you might not have access to doing that. And this is a feature that we're actively working on as well. So there'll be some changes to that in the future, but for right now, it'll have to be pretty much word of mouth and trust within, you know, within the team saying, hey, if you're an owner or maintainer, don't take off the label. We need that for compliance.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for clarifying that, Fernando.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Good question.
So Fernando, I guess you know, also in line with that, if somebody wanted to create another compliance report, say for example for, you know, CCPA, you know, would they have to add it in that project or create a separate project where they track, you know, CCPA compliance?
That's a good question. You can't have multiple labels on a project, so they would have to make a compliance framework. They would have to make a separate compliance framework that includes everything. So let's say I need mine to be GDPR and PCI, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Then I would need to include everything within one pipeline for now.
Okay.
And it's relatively modular. This is actually a really good practice. So what I typically recommend customers do is have three. They might have a CCPA like framework, a GDPR framework, and then a CCPA and GDPR framework that then inherits from the CCPA and GDPR. So that way, if you ever modify the CCPA, both that one and the upstream GDPR one also accept those relational changes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what a lot of people do. They'll create the file and then they'll use the template of the other file to then load it. And a good practice would actually be, let's say we want the developers to test stuff, but we also want that file to run. You can also have the GDPR job then go ahead and inherit whatever's also in the project. So it'll run multiple things at once. So let's say in the GDPR job, we're only running a job that scans the hardware inventory, let's say, right? But we still want the developers to work and deploy their application and run, the certain things that they need to run on it. But we can always use templates to then tell that job to run its stuff, but then also go ahead and run the stuff that the developers have. So yeah, no, it's a good. It's a good practice. So next thing I wanted to go over, and let's see how we're on time. Okay, we got some time. Okay, so next thing I wanted to go over was, so there is this thing, the Kubernetes Yacht Club. And what this does is it deploys certain things. So it'll deploy the ingress controller, it'll deploy an application, and it uses the Kubernetes agent to do that. I'm planning on adding a lot more information on this and in the future, and add this to the notes so I remember, because I got to do it. I want to make a Helm chart for the Kubernetes agent. I've been asked this before, and I want to work with some of the team members to make a Helm chart, because right now what we do is we provide you the YAMLs, but you have to deploy them yourself and like run different commands yourself. And I think a Helm chart would make it way easier to deploy the Kubernetes agent. But essentially, it's an operator that runs on your Kubernetes cluster, and it just listens on a particular folder that you give within the configuration. So if I have GitOps set up, and then it's going to go to tech marketing, DevSecOps, Initech, MISC, GitOps, and it's going to deploy everything in the deployment YAML. So this is the MISC GitOps project, and it's also going to go into the compliance files and go to the deployments folder and deploy everything on there. So if I go back to Initech and I go to partners, and I go to compliance and deploy, and you go to deployments, it'll deploy everything in this file, because that's what's
What?
Can somebody mute Chris? Tavo, are you able to do that? Thanks.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it'll deploy everything on here, and I'll show you that in just a minute within the Kubernetes cluster and everything that's running in it. But let me just continue on before going into that. So the vulnerability reporter is another thing that I've created that uses the GraphQL API. There's a blog on this. I'll see if I can post a link to it, but I have a blog showing how to use the GraphQL API to manage vulnerabilities. So what this does is I just created like a little Go application web app, which looks like this, and it'll just say submit a vulnerability. So this is something useful if you want to make a hackathon, let's say, and you want to make a hackathon where you tell users find vulnerabilities and submit them, because we're creating this process to make our code more secure. So we want vulnerabilities, any vulnerability that you find, submit it. So it uses the GraphQL API in the background. So I can say insecure Zoom, right? Zoom gives others access, right? I can give a little description, blah, blah, blah. And I press submit. And when I press submit, what will happen is a vulnerability has been added to the vulnerability report. And this is the link. So if I go to this link, you can see that it needs triage, insecure Zoom. This is the description. The tool was generic, the severity is unknown, and the scanner was my scanner that I created based off the app called the Firm Scanner. And then there's an identifier here, which just points to localhost. But you can modify this more to have more information, drop downs, etc. I just made it simple to get started. But if you use this vulnerability reporter, you can run it with your access token and your project ID, and you can go ahead and just create vulnerabilities. So it kind of shows you how to use this. And if I go to, let's say, GitLab blogs, I'll just Google that. Just come here and under security, using the GitLab GraphQL API for vulnerability reporting. So I have that set up here, and you can do this with a curl. So you get the project ID, and then you can just perform a curl, and you'll get the data and you'll get the ID of the vulnerability. But then I want to step ahead and actually allow you to import this project and use that API in the backend. And this is a Golang application, and I'm using that API in the backend, and I'm sending requests to the GraphQL API to actually create a vulnerability with the data that's given within the reporter, within the data that's provided here. So, and you can fine tune this, you can add more stuff to it, you can feel free to clone it and use it as you want. I mean, it's under the MIT license, so feel free to play around with that. So that's another project that I had within here. And yeah, between that and the security workshop, those are some of the things I've been working on to really show all these different features and everything within GitLab. So I just kind of wanted to bring this out there and know that the public has access to this. They can modify it. They can, you know, add anything that they want to recommend and do, and we'll continue to enhance this. And I want to kind of have the team, everyone do a similar thing for the different. So right now I'm working with my team to kind of add more architecture diagrams, add more information, get it used within different use cases, not just security. We want this to be also for GitOps, for CI/CD, et cetera, because it really showcases a lot of stuff that enterprise customers really want. So going from there, that's the majority of what I have. And then let me show you, once you integrate the cluster and do everything, I'll show you what you should have running on your cluster. So that'll be the last step. So let me just get my terminal ready. And let me just share. So I'm on my cluster, and if I get namespaces, you'll see the different namespaces that are created for me to deploy stuff. So there'll be the partners, the MISC namespace, ingress. So I pretty much deploy a whole bunch of different things. The ingress controller, we used to be using GitLab managed apps, but now we're kind of moving away from that, and we're actually installing it from the local source. So the YAML that's there in the deployment file for ingress Nginx will be the latest official one. And then if I do kubectl get pods, that's all. You'll be, maybe I shouldn't make it wide. Okay, so you'll be able to see the Echo application. This won't be on there. MariaDB, the notes application that I have, and there's 2 running, the reporter application, and then you'll see the ingress controller and everything that it requires to run. And these are just other stuff that are on, and you'll see the tchotchkes and Hypno app that were the partners on the partner namespace. So that's everything that's running on there, and doesn't really take up, you don't need really that big of a cluster to really get started. It doesn't take up that much memory to run these applications. So you can have one of the smaller clusters and you'll be able to run that from there. So yeah, so far, so any questions? I wanted to open up the last portion of this for questions or suggestions to the application, and we can take notes on just things that we could change. I know that we definitely need more documentation information on how to deploy that, so that's actively being worked on. But besides that, any features or anything that you'd like to see, please feel free.
Yeah, I think Adrian, you want to expound on your answer to the premium features and capabilities?
Yeah, so there was a question, Fern, from I think one of the partners saying that this is great, this is showcasing Ultimate, but in Europe they observe that a lot of customers are currently interested in premium, so potentially trying to move from core up to premium, etc. So do you have any plans to prepare a project that showcases specifically premium features and capabilities? Probably outside of this particular security compliance one. Do you know, is there any initiative at all within your team on that front?
So we did a lot of videos, content that showcase moving from premium to ultimate, but also from basic to premium. And I honestly don't have plans for that right now, but I think it's a great idea because I think it makes sense to have a stepping stone, like, hey, this is what happens when you get with ultimate. Hey, this is what happens when you go to premium. And these are the features that you have. So I think that in the future, it's definitely likely for something like that to come about. Right now, there's no plans for that, but I'll definitely consider that and talk to the team about that for sure.
Yeah, and I answered in there. It's something that on the partner side, we are looking at doing. We want to run hands-on workshops. The initial one would be, in effect, why ultimate from a technical perspective. And we have been toying with the premium after that. So that might come from our side as well.
Perfect. And yeah, and if you need like advice on a workshop, I mean, this is just something that you can just use and kind of change it to your needs, but it's available there and it's free for anyone to use. So by all means, go ahead and clone it and do whatever you need with it. So I'm happy to share the stuff I've worked on.
I don't see any questions in the GitLab doc. Anybody wants to voice a question? You may unmute your line and ask a question if you need to.
Yeah, well, if no questions, I mean, if you think of something later, feel free to add it to the doc and I'll review that at the end of the day. So if you think of anything later, yeah.
Yep. And for partners, of course, you can always, talk to Adrian and some of the folks in EMEA and the US and let them know. And then I will definitely take that into consideration. All right. Thanks, Fern.
Awesome.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated. And thank you, partners, for attending and for participating and asking questions. Hopefully we'll see you on another, CS skills exchange session in the near future.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for attending.
All right. Thanks, friend.
Bye.
Bye.